Hey there, I'm Sara Porritt, and you are tuning in to the Hear Us Roar podcast. Join me for inspired conversations with Asian women, chatting about how ideas and passions can ignite truly transformative journeys. On today's episode, you'll learn how Vanessa Dew went from selling kombucha at a farmer's market with her two best friends to being the co-founder and chief sales officer of a cult favorite beverage brand that's stocked in stores like Whole Foods, Target, and Trader Joe's. This Los Angeles native actively gives back to her community and other entrepreneurs, serving as a USC Marshall Mentor, advising several young CPG companies. She also happens to be an active member of the Gold Rush family. I love how Vanessa refuses to allow anything to get in the way of her vision because she sees everything as a part of an ongoing learning process.
We initially in the farmers markets, I think we put in collectively maybe $2,000, and every week we were breaking even. But in order to scale and grow, we needed working capital. And we didn't realize we needed to get investment until we couldn't pay our credit card bill.
Fast forward to today, and Health-Ade has grown from a self-funded homebrew to one of the fastest growing brands in the category, generating over $150 million in revenue across 30,000 stores. Before we learn more about the brand, let's start at the beginning of Vanessa's story.
I grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, and where we grew up, we were one of probably 5 Asian families that I can think of at the top of my head. It was great being in the hub of what seemed like the center of the universe. There was always so much to do, just from the beach to restaurants to try. I know my parents were big on even taking us out to dinner every weekend, even as kids. I know that in our small world, we had soccer and all the normal extracurricular activities that you can think of. So it seemed like a really great upbringing. But I will say, growing up Asian American in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood, it definitely left me thinking that I lived in two worlds, honestly. It was the your kind of Asian traditions on the weekend where I went to Chinese school, had lots of Chinese food, went to the San Gabriel Valley often with my family, but then I was also wanting to do sleepovers and all the cheerleader events and all the stuff with my friends that they didn't really understand that I had some familial obligations to. So for me personally, it felt like a tale of two worlds, but Los Angeles itself was awesome just in its diversity and activities and just the foods and the exposure to many different things. I'm an Angelino today, and I'm one of the few non-transplants, and I can't see myself living anywhere else.
I love how you describe it. And frankly, too, whenever someone says Chinese school, I get a little PTSD. So I'm curious if you feel like you fit in now, or really does it just not matter? At some point, did that feeling shift for you?
Yeah, so I just feel like I'm my own person now, and it just really doesn't matter on some level. So at the heart of it, cultural designation aside, I think I've always just been that awkward, kind of geeky, dorky girl as well, who was trying to be cool. And at some point, and I think it was sometime in my 20s, I just realized a little bit more about who I am and who I'm not. And it's just all okay. And I am who I am, and my friends and family love me because of that, maybe in spite of that. And I became more comfortable in my own skin. And I actually feel like that's when I could be my best self, and I wasn't trying to be something else or trying to put on this other mask, if you will. And so it kind of is just what it is. It doesn't really matter. And if I could just go back in time and tell my 17-year-old self or 10-year-old self, like, you're not going to care about any of this in about 10 to 20 years. You're just going to be your own strong person. I don't think she would have believed me, but I would definitely want to infuse some of that strength to my younger self.
Why are you jumping ahead in my questions, though?
Oh, sorry.
That was going to... I'm kidding. I didn't even send you any questions. You must be a mind reader, too. That's how intuitive you are. We're on the same wavelength. So after growing up in LA, did you also go to college in LA, or did you move around at all?
So I went to college in San Diego, UC San Diego, and then a couple years after that, I went to grad school at USC. So I've always stayed within Southern California. And I guess a part of me always thought, well, the reason why I went to UCSD, quite honestly, is because I was set to become a bioengineer and cure the world of cancer through some type of scientific means. The stereotypical path of any Asian, right? So I did that with a whole purpose. And at the time, UCSD had the best program for that. But, as I go through my college life, I just realized, why am I studying so hard to do something that I don't think I really want to do, but I feel like I should? So even at that point, I remember like, this isn't for me, but I felt like I was disappointing. When I told my parents that I wasn't going to apply to medical school, I remember I felt like I was such a disappointment. But I wasn't. It was my own, I guess, preconceived notion. But then their immediate question was, okay, so what are you going to do? Become a lawyer?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't know yet. Can I figure it out?
And with your bioengineering degree, you did go into pharma, but in sales. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I figured I like science. I'm, a nerd at heart. And so maybe I wanted to stay within the science world. But I think with my personality and my energy, maybe the back of the house within the lab wasn't for me. So I figured I could get some type of experience in a large global company. And it just so happened that I got an internship and it made sense to accept their full-time offer. And for a 21-year-old to get, an internship that pays great, a job offer right out of school with a top 50 company globally, it felt really good. I had no idea what the pharmaceutical world was like, to be quite honest. And it was definitely, I think, a surprise. And I say that because, I love innovation. I love what science has done for our society. But I'm also very much a natural healer in the sense I like to understand how to prevent disease without actually having to treat it first. And so for me, I realized later on into this career in pharmaceuticals that maybe it just doesn't fully align with me. And it, being a kind of corporate warrior maybe didn't sit well with me either as time went forward.
I really appreciate Vanessa's perspective on healthcare versus sick care. Perhaps perspective is just one of the things that Vanessa has really nailed as someone who has a deep understanding of her own strengths and interests, which helps her to be decisive in making leaps and pivots. In shifting towards a job in sales, which is never an easy gig, I wanted to know if Vanessa was able to parlay any of the skills that she learned towards her more entrepreneurial pursuits, and ultimately, what inspired her to launch Health-Ade Kombucha.
Being within that world of, sales and trying to understand consumer sentiment, you're met with a lot of rejection. And for some, that can really grate on your wherewithal. But for others, I think it just gives you stronger resiliency to move forward. And for me, it was the latter. And so it didn't faze me, rejection. For me, I'm an eternal optimist. So I'm always thinking about the what if and how we really solve something. And it may not be what we originally thought, and there may be a whole different solution. And so that always has been in my DNA. But at the heart of it, I knew that working for this huge company didn't sit right. And I always wanted to create and have something that I could call mine, that I could leave a mark in this world and ultimately better society and have someone say, like, this really helped me. Like, this is good for me. And that really was the thought around me wanting to start a business. And so for me and my best friends, Dinah and Justin, we all felt kind of the same urge, is that we felt this itch to want to create something that was ours. So we started a little entrepreneur club where we were able to brainstorm different business ideas. It wasn't kombucha that came to us first. It was many different other opportunities in our day-to-day life that we thought we could create a solution for, being that eternal optimist. And so we started methodically going through the businesses that we could create. One day, we fell upon kombucha because Justin, the male of our trio, he actually came home from the hairdresser and he thought he was going to go bald by 30. And we wanted to tap into this multi-billion-dollar hair loss industry with something all natural. And anecdotally, we heard that kombucha could be good for that. Dinah had been brewing kombucha in her nutritionist days in grad school. And so we thought, why don't we give this a try? We can do this with fairly low costs, startup costs. So let's just try it out. And we did just that. But, in the end, we realized we're not clinicians and we're not going to start a hair loss company. But what we had was amazing kombucha. We kept on giving it to our friends and our family, and they kept on coming back for more. At that point, we decided to start selling in the farmer's market and, learn something about why people were buying it. And that consumer feedback real time was really special. And so when I think about my time in pharma, just talking to our customers, just building kind of this thicker skin, and then being in the farmer's market as we're starting our company and having this adrenaline rush of something that was ours, that we created, it just seemed really right, really the right view and perspective in life to not give up and really persevere through rejection and through, maybe some of the mucky stuff to get to a better place.
So now I am convinced that you're actually psychic because you got into the kombucha business right as it was starting to boom. And now it's huge. And everyone else is competing against Health-Ade because, frankly, to me, it's top of mind. So that's really incredible. Was there a moment when you decided that this farmer's market life is actually worth leaving my 9-to-5 job for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the entrepreneur life, it doesn't have you don't clock in, clock out. But I would say, so that first year when we started, it was March 25th, 2012. Our first market was in Brentwood. We, all showed up, bells on, and we sold out that first day, 60 bottles. And week over week, we kept on selling out. We kept bringing more. We kept on making more. Before you knew it, we were in 7 farmers markets at the end of 2012. That's a lot of farmers markets. If you've ever been to one, it's like such a lovely stroll. You get to try different foods, but working behind the scenes at a booth at a farmer's market is grueling. You're up at 3 a.m. You are, a lot of manual labor. It's hot. It's cold. And then, at the end of the market, you close down. But if it's your own company, that's not the end of it. You still have to, if you're making kombucha, you're going back to brew some more kombucha for next week. You're going back to, take some orders, deliver, receive any shipments. So it really started to take on this other life where if we were going to see and really go with the momentum of our company that felt like it was growing, it really needed to come to a head where we needed to devote all of ourselves to it. And the distraction of the day job really couldn't be there anymore. We needed to devote our whole self to growing our company. That's when we decided to quit. I remember I quit middle of 2013, and I was in business school at the time. Quitting was hard in the sense of there's uncertainty, but everything in my being told me that it was the right move. But it's more about the creature comforts that I was mostly anxious about. Will I have enough money to make my car payment? Will I have enough money to eat? Stuff like that. Will we be able to survive? And at the heart of it, I was just like, wait, I am a confident person in my own abilities. If this doesn't work out, I can find a job. And I think just telling myself that gave me the safety net I needed to quit. And I remember I told my parents, going back to the Asian conservative thoughts on what you should do. I told my mom and dad I was quitting, and then they thought that I was depressed. They immediately thought I was going crazy because how could I quit this high-paying job for something unknown, something that they didn't even know how to pronounce. It was definitely a battle, but I know it's because they wanted me to be safe and taken care of. But what they didn't know is that I was betting on myself. And I think that's really the best bet to make.
It's funny, the whole time you were saying that, when I think about you in the farmer's market in all kinds of weather conditions, the tiger mom in me just screams, "Are you wearing sunscreen, Vanessa?"
Oh, yeah.
You're very bullish in pushing this forward. And for obvious reasons, right? You expanded really quickly. You saw that people were really interested in the product. But did you ever have any doubts in your mind in those first few weeks and months about the viability of the product? And also, were there any big challenges that you ran into in those first few weeks and months?
Yeah, I think in the viability of the product, there was no question we were onto something. We were just getting comments and feedback left and right. We were selling out every weekend that just told us that we needed to make more, and the market was there for it. So from that standpoint, it was like, build it and they will come, because we keep on selling out. Every week it was something. I remember we had a juicer, and, we weren't using the commercial juicer because that cost millions of dollars. So we were juicing ginger, and that just exploded in our commercial kitchen, and definitely could have blinded us, but we were like, okay, we got to go get another one. We also got a shipment of our glass jars, and we were so cheap, we didn't opt in for the delivery. So I was on shift that day, and I remember having to move close to 500 glass jars by myself out of a 50-foot truck. I think that was the hardest piece of it, not so much believing in the product or where we could take it. It was more so, how do we scale this? Like, are we going to be forever doing this manual work that's blood, literally sweat, tears? That was the hardest part to battle through. And then one day, I remember the biggest setback in those early years was the health department. I remember, because we're so gritty, we're so entrepreneurial. We were in our commercial kitchen that we rented, and we're like, how do we make more and make this use space more efficient? Well, we didn't know much about the health department, and that we have to get everything literally checked out by them in terms of like checked off by the city in terms of plans. And so although all health grade and viable for use at what we've been doing, the health department came by, and because they didn't approve our makeshift rack, they were going to shut us down. And I remember we were on the cusp of getting a purchase order from a grocery store in Los Angeles. We had like orders up the wazoo that we needed to deliver on, and we were going to be shut down. And I just remember thinking, how do we get out of this? Luckily, we were able to do some fancy moves and just dance right out of it. But it was a setback for sure for about 2 days. And then we moved to one of our kitchens that year. But that was probably we didn't know how we would survive after that.
I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? With all these
Yeah.
regulations with regards to the health department, I'm sure you ran into more sort of technical issues as well. How did you scale?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of grit defined how we scaled, and ultimately a really strong team. And so, scaling a product takes a deep expertise in manufacturing that realistically we three did not have. But while we did not have knowledge in manufacturing, we had a lot of just gumption. So by the nature of just every piece of strength that we could muster up, we literally just grew in that way. And it was like a lot of manual labor. But after 2014 is when we really started to put pieces into play to help optimize the business in order to scale. We bought machines. We hired team members that had a deep domain expertise that could really help lead us to the next level wherever we were at. So at that point in time, I remember we hired a bunch of people in operations and manufacturing to help us get our line up and running. We needed to, or else how would we deliver on the massive orders ahead of us? And so that was essential. And every year in every chapter of Health-Ade seemed that, we needed all-stars to join our team to take us to a new level, whether it be in sales, marketing, operations. And gradually, slowly but surely, we did just that, and we scaled in many different ways, not just manufacturing.
So was there a moment that felt like a big break that really took Health-Ade to the next level?
Yeah, I think there's been a few of them if I think about over the course of the last 8 years now that we've been in business. I would say the early time, maybe 2014, was when we received our first purchase order from a grocery store. It was like a whole new world. Prior to that, we were maybe doing 60 cases a week. I mean, one pallet was 60 cases and they ordered, I think, 10 of them. So that seemed like a huge break. And then, our brand has really strong legs, and the strength of our brand, we have very loyal consumers. And I remember the Kardashians had posted around Health-Ade, not because we use them as influencers, but because they really love the brand. And I can't tell you how many family and friends and just some of our consumers and just friends of the brand emailed us about that. I feel like that's when things really started to take shape, both from a market perspective, a sales perspective, and we really started to spread our wings.
In today's world, being Kardashian famous is almost like being endorsed by Oprah 10 years ago. That type of validation, especially when it's organic, has to feel extremely reassuring. Just from personal observation and walking around New York City, pretty much every single bodega and grocery store carries Health-Ade Kombucha. And as an outsider, I would assume that Vanessa's incredibly driven, which she is, and therefore also incredibly confident. And yet, in a lot of her previous interviews, Vanessa has been very candid in describing her journey towards discovering her self-worth. I asked Vanessa if this is something that she continues to struggle with in some capacity, and how she's been able to tackle this over the years.
I definitely think it comes in layers. It's kind of like peeling back an onion. And, going back to, I think, one of your earlier questions around living in two worlds as an Asian American female, I feel like I really had to become comfortable with my identity first and foremost in order to have a foundation for that confidence. And without that, not knowing who I am at my core would have been a real detriment. And I think just battling through that and understanding, like, I am Asian, I have strong traditions, but I'm also American, and that lends me a great advantage in a different way and gives me perspective. Knowing that has made me stronger. And I would say that over the last couple years, especially in building the business, there's not a lot of A, females who lead businesses in this world, B, Asian females who start businesses. And so there weren't a lot of people who look like me. And so I think for me, it really helped to build the confidence to really seek out organizations like Gold House and other communities that help support Asian American entrepreneurs and creators. And so that really helped give me the little extra oomph that I needed. But also recently I became a mom. And for me, I think that has helped give me perspective in a different way and appreciation for what the body can do and can go through, what your mind mentally can handle. And also, I guess, feeling more confident in the care and the future vision of what the world is and my part in it. I know that sounds super cheesy, but definitely I have a newfound, I think, love of myself after becoming a mom too. And so that's what I mean by layers, is it's like peeling back an onion and discovering little bits about yourself. And I know that's happened to me over the last 15 years for sure.
Yeah, and as you're progressing in life, I'm sure there's more to that Vanessa onion to peel. You did bring up Gold House. Let's touch on that real quick, because for the current season of Hear Us Roar, I have partnered with Gold House, and specifically Gold Rush, to feature some of the incredible founders, both through this podcasting platform as well as digitally on my website, on social. And transparently, part of the reason why I was really drawn to the partnership is because Asian American businesses were some of the quickest and also hardest hit by the pandemic. And I think it's so critical for all of us to support the brands that we love and adore, which is something that Gold Rush has done so beautifully. What made you join that program as a founder and want to affiliate yourself with them more officially? And what were some of the more valuable things that you got out of that relationship?
A couple years ago, I want to say, Health-Ade had strong legs. We have been growing at the fastest clip in the category. And so I felt like it was a good time for me to kind of pop my head up and really see, okay, what else is out there beyond just growing Health-Ade and having Health-Ade define my identity? as an entrepreneur. And like I said, there's very few people who look like me in this CPG world, very few Asian female founders. And I was starting to feel like I needed something else. I needed a community. I needed a sounding board that I can go to really talk about growing our company, and especially being Asian at that. And as I kind of put out my feelers, Gold House came to me, I think through a friend. I was introduced to the founders of Gold House. And immediately I was really, I think, amazed that there are little pockets of communities like Gold House that are trying to support Asians in their endeavors. And so exactly what I was feeling, there's a whole community of them in Gold House. And it's all so positive. It's all meant to be able to bolster up our brothers and sisters in what we're trying to achieve. And I think just having some partners in arms to go through this entrepreneurial journey is so special, because feeling alone in this is probably the worst thing that can happen to an entrepreneur's mindset. And so finding people who are very like in how they think and also their experiences culturally just give you that crutch to be able to lean on when times are hard. The more that we can push out the message of Gold House, the more that we can expose other people to Asian businesses, allows the community to really grow and thrive and to fight this idea of xenophobia and to help make everyone stronger in the process. And so that's why I was really drawn to it. And I've been so proud to be able to represent Gold House in many different ways. And I think Gold Rush, just bringing together all these cool businesses, I didn't even know some of these businesses existed, and I am Asian, has been such a unique way to come upon new products.
You are definitely a community leader because you brought a lot of other founders into the fold. For those who are listening to this podcast who aspire to launch their own brand or product, do you have one thing that you advise that they do tomorrow to be able to get one step closer to their dream?
I guess I would say follow your gut and ultimately make the decision to move forward. And what I mean by that is, there's a million ways to slice and dice a decision. There's a million ways to needle the decision around the color of your label, the product that you think you're going to put out to market. And so don't let perfect get in the way of great or even good, because taking that first step is like the hardest step. And if you're not moving it forward, you're just not moving it. So you don't actually have anything. And so I would just say, take that first step, follow your gut, just keep on moving, don't dwell.
That's awesome. And I loved our conversation. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
It's been so fun. Thanks for having me, Sara.
And thank you for tuning into the Hear Us Roar podcast. If you connected with Vanessa's journey, please comment and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, pop over to www.hurpodcast.com so that you can stay up to date on all the latest episodes. It's a great way for us to keep in touch so that I can continue to encourage you to see your passions blossom. I'm your host, Sara Porritt, and until next time.